Good evening, everybody. My name is Shakib Niazi. I'll be moderating today's event for the BCS IT Leaders Forum. Welcome. So just a bit of housekeeping before we start. If you've got any questions, use the question section on the panel and enter your questions. We'll have a Q&A session at the end so that we can ask your questions then. So just keep typing in. We won't ask them all the time at the same time. We'll just do it at the end. So today's event is about augmented reality. That's industrial training using AR. Now, we'll start off with Dr. Freundlin Wild, talking about the performance augmentation in the real world. Freundlin is a professor at the Institute of Education Technology of the OU, also leading the performance augmentation laboratory called PAL. Welcome. So the second speaker is Hendrik Comedy, and he'll talk about the market opportunity for augmented work and training. One second. So Hendrik is an entrepreneur, business advisor, and researcher with over 15 years in digital platforms and project management. Welcome. We then have Ralph Klammer talking about advocating AR end user involvement in DevOps. Ralph is responsible for the DevOps and data science activities like learning analytics, sensor fusion, and immersive feedback. He's been a principal investigator on numerous EU projects. Welcome. The last session, Dr. Freundlin will take over, is the industrial application case for AR training. So as we start the session, I'll pass over to Dr. Freundlin. Would you like to take over?
Thank you, Shakib. Yeah, hi, I'm Freundlin Wild from the Institute of Educational Technology and also the CEO of WeKit ECS, a spin-out company engaging in, I call it, performance augmentation for the real world. We are doing this for the reason that we are currently encountering a big shift, in particular in the workforce, in particular in manufacturing, where jobs are being changed and laid off as well due to automation, which then triggers all of these changes you see summarized quite nicely in the words of McKinsey. It triggers a shift in mindset towards even more lifelong learning. It triggers the invention of new collar jobs. IBM speaks of gray collar jobs, for example. No longer blue, no longer white. And that, of course, then requires different organizational structures that are more agile, different managerial posts, senior leadership functions in the C-suite, and also a different overall workforce composition, hopefully not too much or without the negative side effects going towards a gig economy of independent contractors and freelancers. So that shift is inevitable and is currently happening. Embrace the change, because at the same time we're also encountering new possibilities how to scale up training. And if you allow me to summarize in Ralph's and my words, article we wrote together with our colleague Ilona Buchen from Berlin, technology enhanced learning, digital education, so to speak, has gone over the decades through various transformations. First and foremost, the invention of the email enabled the exchange of material conveniently without carrying disks around, and that quite naturally led to the invention of the web, and then in the terms of learning technologies also to the invention of the VLE, the virtual learning environment, or as the colleagues on the continent say, the learning management systems. And it was not far from there with the rise of mobiles and smartphones and tablet computers that a need for personalization emerged, and the technology caught up with that. So we would find examples such as the language learning app Duolingo that use adaptation at scale and bring it to the masses. Today, we live, in our point of view, in a new phase, at the brink of a new age of technology-enhanced learning, looking at disintermediation technologies, where we no longer are in need of carrying a device directly around that mediates access to the real world, or stare into a screen that mediates the access to the real world behind. or connected to it, but we can wear smart glasses or other types of wearables that allow to learn in so far unprecedented ways. So what has happened in wearable technologies over the last few years? The field was invented somewhere in the 50s by the invention of the first wearable computer by Ed Thorpe, who built with Claude Shannon a roulette cheating computer that they would wear in the shoe, connected to an earphone and speaker output. So when you would watch how the croupier sets the ball in the roulette table and time it well with the toe switches, you could have a 44% chance of predicting which field it lands on, and that would be directly output to the ear of the wearer. That was undoubtedly the first wearable computer. They went on to build some other machines that look like, if you would try something like that today, you can be lucky if you get out alive out of the casino. But it certainly was groundbreaking at the time, a big milestone in history. An equally big milestone in history is the MIT Wearable Computing Group, led by Steve Mann on the left, who is still advising to this day several of the smart glasses companies you would find around. They were building in parts quite adventurous stuff, and if you ever have the time, check out the stories Steve Mann has to tell in his blog. They're quite amusing, quite some penny dreadfuls, how employees of McDonald's in Paris tried to rip the device he's wearing here, drilled to his head from his skull. This was a device he would wear for a long time, or one of these versions that he developed for years at time, allowing people to see what he sees and send messages to the screen. From there, and from these initial kind of system-centric research prototypes that were not particularly beautiful or particularly functional or with a particularly good user experience, the field has come a long way, and we would find not only the old school wearable computing with accessories that many of you may be wearing, to things that are not yet quite around everywhere, but more and more widespread, like smart glasses, to things that are on the horizon. You can, out of fabrics these days, build a complete, fully fledging computer with the PCB being built out of the fabric itself. The new school of smart textiles is context sensitive and context aware. So it would react to things happening in the environment and adapt the experience presented to the user in a way that it deals with the inputs and creates new outputs. And one can even think quite wide when thinking about the responders such a new school smart textile could provide, from display technologies available to chemical responses or magnetic responses like vibration in your sleep. Textiles, smart textiles today are used in various forms as carriers, as sensors and actuators, or in fact really as a complete replacement for a computer. And there are some very amazing research prototypes on the far horizon. That's not what we will talk about today. We will talk about something that is possible today, and that is TEL 4.0, the disintermediation. Learning technologies benefit a lot from these wearables. Here you see an example on the left that is some embroidery circuit board prototype, and on the right something from our WeKit project, from which we founded the startup company. WeKit was investigating not only how to bring augmented reality based learning and training to smart glasses, but also how to further support that with an additional wearable garment with a harness that he could wear. And you see there in the background some snapshots from one of the end user development workshops about how to place the sensors, which sensors to integrate, and so on and so on. There's even some methodology developed from there that gives you insight in how you prototype your own. And further material is available from Code Reality, giving you a bit of guidance towards real production and miniaturization. What also has become quite amazing is the rendering technology that we use these days. The light estimation will look into reflections, direct light, ambient light, color bleeding, and adapt the rendering accordingly, so that when you augment something like the virtual mannequin here in the middle, it becomes indistinguishable on such a delivery device here from the real world. With video see-through displays, that is quite well possible to create illusions on a quality of modern film where you can't really make out what is real and what is virtual. Also, what has changed is the ability of computers to see. Spatial computing is possible for quite some time, but hasn't been possible on small portable devices, such as the Microsoft HoloLens 2 that you see here with several integrated cameras, or the competitor product, the Magic Leap, several other interesting competitor products almost at the start or already at the start, or even on more lightweight devices like your modern smartphone will have capabilities from optical SLAM to do not the same quality, but good quality spatial mapping. This all put together in smart glasses allows us to deliver training in very different ways and in a manifold variety of applications that I will talk in a short while about. But I now would hand over to Endrit to let him talk about the emerging market opportunities for you as IT companies that you might want to offer to your customers.
Thank you, Freelin. And thank you everyone for this opportunity to present here. My name is Endrit Kromida. I am a business manager for WikiDCS, and at the same time, I'm a senior lecturer, entrepreneurship and innovation at the University of Birmingham. So, Freelin, would you, right. Okay, that's fine. So I can control, or well, either way. I want to start with a quote that, in my opinion, underlines the motivation behind all the efforts, all the technology that has been pushing augmented reality and virtual reality until now. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I might remember, involve me and I learn. It's been quoted to Confucius and Franklin. And in a world that has become more distant as we live due to COVID-19, we are looking for ways, alternatives to keep going with work, with training, and other work experiences. And involvement, in a way, has become scarce, but yet it remains equally important and necessary as before. So, starting from this point, my presentation consists of 3 parts. I'll try to talk about 3 parts. I'll try to summarize a little bit on the market opportunities and the market drive and the market position of augmented reality. I'll talk about 3 main areas where I think it has been applied in work training, and I will reflect a little bit on the motivation behind that. So what drives it from a business point of view? Right. This diagram, you might be aware of it. It shows the famous Gartner diffusion hype cycle. So in 2010, the reason why I added it here is because in 2010, augmented reality was almost at the tip, still not there yet, with a prediction that within 5 to 10 years, it will become mainstream. We are here in 2020. We are using it, but yet from a business perspective, I would say that yet a lot has to be done. So a lot remains undone. So while technology has advanced quite a lot, business applications and business acceptance and adaptation of augmented reality is still lagging behind. So why is that? Before we get there, let's have a look at where it has been applied. Yeah, the first area I would say is safety at work. Next one. So there are three areas: safety at work, people skills, and technical skills. I'll start with the first. This is a screenshot from 3M, and as you might all know, 3M is one of the, well, innovative company, well known for that, and their main business, it's not augmented reality, but because they produce a lot of material safety equipment, they have used in their business approach augmented reality, or they use it as a way to train workers through that, and in a way use it as a marketing channel for their own products. So what you see is someone being trained with a headset, how to stay safe in a building under construction, has to connect that hook with a safety belt, and that way it gets a green check. So yes, that's how you stay safe on top of buildings when it's windy and can be dangerous to fall down. Based on that, companies like Striver, that has been working with companies like Verizon in the United States, but they do something completely different when it comes to safety at work, health and safety. Their training was mainly focused on how to handle armed robbery in a retail shop. So you can see the diversity between the types of training. And so how to handle well, an armed robbery. And obviously it's safer to run through such scenarios using augmented reality rather than in real life. And based on their research, they report 97% readiness of workers trained with VR to handle dangerous situation. And that in turn led to some increased customer satisfaction. So that is in a way the business model or the story behind health and safety investment in augmented reality, because we can all admit that for someone who is not very familiar, but who has to make business decisions, business expenditure decision, looking at the equipment that is needed for augmented reality, they still remain expensive. And the element of the unknown, it adds to that factor of risk to change from the current ways of doing things and training workers to something new. So that is technology, because in a way it saves money. The next application is people skills. We can go to the next slide. People skills. Many companies have had to face a lot of issues with workers suing them or other workers due to various situations at work, from sexual harassment to bullying, discrimination, and such issues do cost companies money. What augmented reality offers in a safe, and I would say not as risky from a financial point of view, HR and companies, is an environment where one can learn how to apply those skills and experiment with various scenarios, not only to be faced with various situations, but also to have a better understanding of themselves. Now, debates could be raised in that area, whether it's are the companies going a bit too far in the psychological understanding of their employees, because the immersive nature and the analytical nature of augmented reality sensors and the way they interact, and they also learn from the interaction of users, could open a door for well, debates. But the rationale behind for a safer and more pleasant workplace while building people skills to augmented reality stands from a business point of view. The next area of application is technical training, and that is where we focus at with WikiDCS. However, the screenshot there comes from Reflect, a German company, who claim that using augmented reality in technical training, in the screenshot you see how they use it to train doctors on how to use new medical equipment, could lead to 60% faster training and onboarding times. and lowering the risk of human errors, because the machine will not forget to teach you what a human lecturer might. So these are the three main areas: safety at work, people skills, and technical skills. And from a business decision point of view, that is where a decision has to be made when well, spending for augmented reality. Next. I can't. So business opportunities and challenges. I'll get back to some more data here. We can go to the next. According to our study with Mirage XR, our corporate enterprise solution, a lot of companies spend a lot on training, and because of the reasons I'm going to list after this, there is quite a substantial decrease in such cost for various reasons. So regardless of an initial apparently expensive amount of money that needs to be spent in augmented reality, long-lasting partnerships could lead to more savings. How would that be possible? Next. To justify that, I thought it's important to position where we stand on the application of augmented realities. The current diagram, the diagram I'm trying to show, shows how various applications in various industries or areas can be seen. And of course, the most advanced one in terms of application and use is manufacturing and construction. And that is not surprising because of the reasons I just mentioned before, but starting with health and safety, but also technical training and the people skills. And that is where most of the investments and the companies and the startups are trying to look at. Some of them shifting from technology built for communication, media, and entertainment to manufacturing. Next. Judging by the shape of these diagrams, we can position augmented reality in Rogers' diffusion of innovation curve. So judging by the shape of the earlier diagram, the stage where early adopters are adopting it. So the technology exists. So this is not a diagram about where technology stands, but it's a diagram about the implementation. And because of the high speed of picking up an implementation, a lot of opportunities are being perceived by startups or companies developing various products and systems in augmented reality. And that has captured the attention of many companies. So that steep increase there in a way shows where we stand at the moment. What drives that? Next. It is realistic, and it's beyond realistic. From a project named Augmented Reality app, 10,000 Moving Cities, where anyone can play around it in a way, shape and build their own city or destroy or build buildings. We can see how not only it's possible to play with reality, but also construct and deconstruct reality. So that gives endless opportunities. And because of that and the realistic nature of it, that allows experimentation about the place and beyond that, but also a certain level of creativity and innovation while keeping the users engaged through a new experience. Once past that barrier of initial introduction, it becomes, well, in a way, it opens a window to a new world. Next, so it is realistic. That is one of the key drivers. It is becoming more and more accessible, and that is why I've picked two screenshots from two mobile apps. On XR, they pride themselves for providing training on learning, collaboration, and creating opportunities through augmented reality. Similarly, well, Snappy presents itself as possibly the next Facebook, social media, social network system, where users might, the reality and the augmented reality might overlap and create quite another dimension. I'm not quite sure. I'm not here to judge on the business prospects of that and the response from larger existing social media networks like Facebook with Oculus and other technologies they're introducing and launching at the moment. But in a way, we can see where it's going. So it is accessible. It has got to not only to the company servers and workplace, but also to individual mobile phones and small, simpler devices. While the recording of augmented reality remains a challenge, as Fridolin and Ralph explain or will explain, the user's experience, it's easier and it has become more and more accessible, even on a mobile level. So accessibility is important, one of the key drivers. Next. It is engaging, and these two screenshots are from our experiences and playing around with our Wicked solution. One is trying to change an airplane wheel, and the other is just trying to drive a cruise ship or shipping with a cruise ship. So it is engaging. It is engaging to the level, but it has gone beyond video games, because one might think, well, it looks like a video games, but that stigma in a way has fallen. So it is considered normal to train pilots, war pilots, through, in a way, simulations, and at the same time changing planes or doing a lot of other things. So the level of engaging that has been already evidenced in the gaming applications of augmented reality, of course, perhaps minus the headsets and the complicated gear, it is being translated now in the workplace, and that is resulting into way higher results than normal training, normal ways of training workers. Next. It is cost effective. Through this image, what I'm trying to show is one of the unique features we have at Wicked ECS, what we call ghost tracking. So the ghost you see there is the recreated image of an expert that performed a particular task, but then anyone could do the same while having that expert there as a hologram performing the same task, and in a way judging whether they're doing it right or not, or having that guidance, that holographic guidance, who had done it before. The cost-saving element of that is that the ghost or the expert or the recording of the expert can be played endlessly without the expert being there present anymore. So only once when it is recorded. Now, of course, questions and answers and other challenges students might have might be raised later on, but it is a big step forward. Next. So, and it is adaptive. So improves customer satisfaction, faster training, reduces error. So in a way, it learns. So learning analytics. And while the debate might still be there about how much should a technology know about the user, and we're talking about the GDPR as well before. So GDPR applications on wearable technology, augmented technology, those debates might come up when it becomes more mainstream. The application is there that while it learns, it also can offer a better training and learning experience to the user. So it is adaptive. Next. What's the future? In my view, the future will be characterized by these three elements. In a way, will go around and around. So as more and more competitors enter the market, and as more and more companies become interested, augmented reality training at work or at various applications of it will become more accessible. So due to competition, accessibility will be increased, and that in a way, due to more accessibility and competition, integration will become a natural response to reduce costs, but also along the movement of Internet of Things and Industry 4.0, integration would be needed as a normal response, creating again more opportunities, but at the same time more competition, and going through that cycle to reach the peak of the diffusion of innovation and use. We're not there yet. We're still at early stages, so a lot of companies, startups are at certain experimental stage, and the adaptation is not yet large scale, but we can see more and more use, as I said, from retail to warehousing to manufacturing and various areas. And I believe the current situation with COVID-19 and the social distancing or various kinds of distancing and well the redefinition of safety and technology and interaction and training has opened doors and created opportunities and in a way raised more awareness for augmented reality at work and its business case. So that was all from me, and I'll pass on to Ralph for the third part.
Thank you, Endrit. Endrit is the business manager of Week at ECS, and now we're switching over to the CTO, Ralph Klammer. Ralph has also a second life. Ralph is running a research group at RWTH Aachen, the German MIT equivalent, and in Week at ECS is also looking at the development processes where kind of his research teams up with what he does in the company. And the floor is all yours. I'll hand over when you're ready.
Yes, thank you very much. So it's my pleasure to talk a little bit about our commitment to open source development at Week at ECS and what is in the pipeline for supporting that. The title is Advocating Reality End User Involvement in DevOps. And first of all, so what is the situation?
Not
if you look at
your screen, Ralph.
I
don't
have. So sorry. I thought you would. Are we seeing it now?
Not yet. Could you pass over the right to present? You should have it, I think.
Now?
Good, here we go. Perfect.
Okay, so in the moment, we have roughly around 7 million developers on this planet, unevenly distributed. In some regions of the world, we have more, in others less. But on the other side, we have around 4.1 billion internet users in the moment, and they want all to be served by innovative applications. And if you look at this ratio from developers to end users, we somehow need to mobilize the end users to be part of what will be developed in the future. So they need to raise their voice. And if you look, for example, at the issue tracker of PHP, so you have around 50 messages from end users each day, and with open source development community, you can handle that. If you look at the same time at the issue tracker of Firefox, so then you have roughly around 80,000 issues created each day by end users, and alone sorting out the duplicates is a really tough job. That means we need really to learn to use the right tools to listen to these million voices, and one of these tools would be to become more social in software engineering, more inclusive. And the second idea is to use more artificial intelligence because the data we get from the crowd, as for example, sorting out duplicates, is a task which can be partly automated by having a good support from data mining and machine learning. Okay, so a kind of AI-driven social software engineering with the aim to listen to all these voices. And if you look at the right, so you see here DevOps as a de facto industry standard for development of large software ecosystems. That means we have a joint venture of developers developing software, deploying it on machines, mostly on Docker images nowadays, and they will monitor the execution of software, and then they give some feedback to the developers. And this is the typical DevOps cycle, which is applied, I would say, in the majority of modern software companies. So where are the end users? So the end users are everywhere, and they can also contribute to all these processes, thereby, for example, delivering ideas and needs, being active in the co-design of application design, by changing their practices due to the software. But all these data are lost at the moment, because we have not the right tools to use that. And secondly, if we going to mixed reality future, so we have also the opportunity to meet people really where they are in the virtual spaces, in the augmented spaces, in the mixed spaces, and communicate and collaborate in those spaces with them. That is exactly what we want to do also with a company, so to do social requirements engineering, to work with standard DevOps tool, but enhance the data collection, the success analytics, the input of requirements from the crowd. So the future of software engineering are communities, and on the left you see a perhaps well-known figure. This is the long tail, so which was introduced into marketing by Anderson when he researched that with electronic commerce we can sell more of less. So it means even niche products are marketable in online commerce environment, where you have not the limitation of physical space like in a warehouse. And exactly that is what we face now in software engineering. We have endless numbers of communities, a lot of them quite large, but many of them are quite small and they don't know each other. So what we need here is somehow to make a matchmaking between the developers and the end users. And on the right side, you look at a certain snapshot of the internet, so which is taken from a book from Albert Barabasi, showing if you take arbitrary sample of from the web, you will get always the same structure. This is a famous bow tie structure, with a central core, the in and out continents, the tubes, and the islands. And we find communities everywhere. And these laws are so fundamental that they have changed the way we do business, so on the web, and you know all that stuff at Web 2.0, and exactly is that what has created Facebook and other companies. And we started to use these ideas also for software engineering. And one tool for social software engineering we created over the year and also using actively in many projects and also in the company is the requirements bazaar. You can see it as a kind of Facebook for social requirements engineering, so where you can create projects and requirements in the public. You can get feedback by likes and dislikes. You can get comments and so on. And this public installation is open for everybody, but of course you can also download the open source project and install your own environment for your private use or whatever. So this is free of use for everybody, and it's quite heavily used also by many parties. Having said that, yeah, so we know also that people like to give feedback using the devices they are using in their real life. If you look at the Android marketplace, yeah, so and look into the comments for all the applications, you find a lot of requirements there, and the same will happen with mixed reality. So that means that if you have more mixed reality environments, there are more needs to communicate through these mixed requirements through these environments. And secondly, we have a trend to agile methods in software engineering, as you know. So DevOps is not the same like agility, but they work hand in hand with agile methods. So the idea was to create environments that combine agility and mixed reality, and this is fostering a lot of things like spatial memory, like collaboration, like global interaction. As I said, there are 7 million developers unevenly distributed over the planet and billions of users. They can all meet in virtual spaces and a lot of more things. And this is also something which is open source. You can get it from GitHub, also like our company product. And so what you get here is an visualization and analysis of software projects. Yeah, so publicly hosted on GitHub. We have a lot of features I cannot show here because of the time limit, but if you are interested, please contact me. Yeah, so for more details. We have agile methods already working in an augmented space, in the virtual space, in the mixed space. Yeah, so like Kanban boards. That is only one example where you can share tasks in such an environment. We work on more features. Yeah, so also for enhance the motivation of end users to participate in such processes, right? Like gamification. So that is already the end of my short presentation. Yeah, so we started with DevOps, and in the moment we are trying to build tool chains for getting end users in those processes, like having social requirements engineering tools, but also using AI for the analysis and mixed reality for collaboration and meeting. And that was an example, just in one of the examples which are existing, how to do that to create engineering environments in mixed reality. So thank you very much, and I think we go back to Fridolin.
Thank you, Ralph, particularly for these insights, how we can support communities of software developers. Bringing it all together, I think it's a nice wrap up here now, the last part of our presentations, where we look at application cases for AR training, what this really looks like. So at the beginning, we've seen a little bit how the world is changing and what new wearable technologies are there to create new digital education initiatives with smart glasses and other types of wearables. Then we have briefly seen the business perspective of use cases, potential, where we stand, what are the significant differences of the medium. We have seen Ralph's presentation so far about how to support communities in AR, VR, XR as well with application development. And now we look at some real use cases. So First example that I brought is a system that we built back in 2014 as a research prototype that gave birth to the whole idea of augmented reality training. We just hooked up a lead motion hand scanner with an expert receiving the video image transmitted from the perspective of the trainee, and that would allow the expert to map their virtual hands directly into field of view of the user and hands-on give training to them. It was very fantastic. Our paper was out a year earlier, I think, than the MIT paper on a similar thing. And we went on and thought, that's a fantastic idea. Can't we build something like that in full life size with ghost tracks? So we built the first very experimental system in the WeKit project, where you see here how the recording works from the perspective of a trainer. So this is a real test bed. This is airplane maintenance of ambulance airplanes and helicopters. We would have an expert now show a specific part of the pre-flight check procedure, recording that with the smart glasses. And then in a second, we will see what it looks like to the trainee when the expert is no longer present. That was minded the very first prototype, so it looks a bit abstract and rather geometrical shapes, but we try to focus on the most important aspects, meaning where does the expert look, where are the hand positions, that just a little clear in front of the user, and the voice. 600 within limits. You can see that the ghost is slightly transparent because modern holographic glasses would augment the real world by projecting a shimmering hologram into your transparent glasses. So you would still see the real world, but the shimmering hologram in front of you. That we then developed within a 3-year project into a fully fledging training tool. Here you see another example that Endrit already mentioned earlier, training of astronauts, aviation engineers and the like, with task cards and step-by-step guidance with different types of augmentations, and also the ability to interface with the machines. So you will see in a second how we are simulating a fault. Here, in that case, just sending something on an MQTT message bus, and the system reacts to it adaptively, shows that the activity has to be stopped here, and branches off into a life-saving activity. The astronaut trainers always called it, which I find is a pretty strong motivation to actually engage in learning and training. You will see here another example of machines talking. So this is an example prototype developed by our partners VTT, where you see some Arduino with some buttons that are also capable of sending signals, as would be many modern machines with different message bus protocols available. Depending on the industry, this may be MQTT or some other protocol.
Check the environment sensors from the sensor panel.
Demonstrates a little bit of what's possible. So you can see here the fully fledging training system as it was in the WeKit project. By now it is slightly revised, and the design is advanced, and we have polished things to the level of perfection. But it gives you a good insight into what is actually possible.
Retrieve and pick up the battery charger.
And then it branched back. It recovered the states from the previous session, where before the branching off, before the simulated error. And now guides to the other side of the rover. One of the rovers, I understand there are something like 150 different rovers. And shows how to connect the battery charger to prepare the self-driving vehicle for the outdoor mission. Same way one can, of course, handle many other use cases of maintenance and operations of machinery.
Push the mode button on the battery charger device to start the charging.
There we go. Good. The ghost track we also refined further. So you can see here on the right the final version that we were working with at that point in time. that not only picks up the indoor navigation position from the device itself, but also additionally can hook up with smart armbands to sense also the forearm position, and it could easily be interfaced with a smart glove as well to sense finger movement, or where the optical tracking of the smart glasses is available, the finger movement can be picked up quite precisely these days, which was not the case with the HoloLens 1. Why does it work? We have ran extensive trials with these technologies. We ran over 500 people through academically planned and executed trials, also with control group settings. If I summarize, I think the main findings from a technical perspective would be, it works because it's not object-centric. It works because it's not just a marketing augmentation bringing a product to life, but it works because it is activity-centric, because the AR is not just a gimmick. The AR is essential and covers the whole instructional sequence, and in particular it covers various different instructional design methods. So it allows people to highlight something, it allows to direct focus, provide haptic hints, show how to mirror something, give cues and clues, and guide step by step. Also explicitly with all the talking, with all the task cards and the reading outs. So the users are not lost with what they're actually supposed to do, or don't need to be enticed with very expensive graphics and animation design. It also helps to have quick production methods, and production methods are currently improving a lot. On the right, you see examples from the Dimension Studios. I think they were shot originally for Pearson Interactive. They produced, or may have been another studio, they produced here the holographic patient, as you see, an actor filmed in 4D, showing different stages of a condition. On the left, you see some examples from my own lab, where we scan people, and when you scan people with cheap technology, you typically can see that there are lots of artifacts that you need to deal with, and we wrote a nice paper on how you do that cost effectively with cheap technology that helps you to morph existing scans that are maybe not fully complete together with existing shape models, so as to fix, for example, the figures that typically get lost in scanning, or make sure that the head shape and the ears are actually nice and fine. But there are many other ways of producing 3D content quickly, and I'm sure that in the next years this will further improve. If I look at what amount of companies are currently being started in London, for example, FE, in Dublin, for example, Holograms, to take the 4D filming, the volumetric filming, to production level for cheap, and not like in the Dimension Studios with 120 odd cameras and long post editing, but maybe something that you can afford as a company with 3-4 cameras and then interpolating the rest. So there's progress being made, and I'm sure that the future will show a lot, but with existing repositories there is already a lot possible as well. The other important thing for scaling operations up and create content quickly for augmented reality learning is the use of standards. In the IEEE, we have brought ARLEM, the Augmented Reality Learning Experience Model, to standardization, and since April now this year, it is a fully fledging standard. So that means it's the first fully fledging content description model for augmented reality, and can probably be much wider applied than just for learning experiences. In fact, it probably suits any sort of augmented reality experience, and has then the big advantages of you don't require specialist tools and skills. So your content authors can be regular trainers, regular storyboard writers, and do not necessarily have to be Unity developers and graphics designers in Maya. It's no longer tied to a specific platform. So for Wicked ECS, for example, the content executes across a variety of platforms. So it runs on a HoloLens 1, on a HoloLens 2, on Android, and soon on iOS as well. It integrates with other sensors because you can pick up signals and you can react to them with thresholds and other operators. So you can actually react to a machine sending information about a button has been clicked, or you can pick up thresholds from a temperature sensor and react accordingly to it, or simulate it where you should require for training purposes. It has branching and flow control. It directly embeds the instructional feedback and no longer lets the 3D objects remain on a gimmicky level. Allows to check for errors. It allows also to log user activity through an interface with the Experience API. We can directly link through from competence to performance. You know what you're looking for, and you can check whether the users actually did it, and can even measure the speed of execution and things like that. Yeah, and you can support, update, modify, reuse without tool licenses or tool skills. That's the big advantage of being standards conform. Yeah, what have we found in all the academic analyses? We found that AR, XR, VR can further relax the constraints on time and space. It can help you avoid downtime of employees by sending them off to trainings and instead offer them workplace embedded learning or guidance. It can drastically reduce the training time, can provide autonomy where the support is not available or practical. For example, our astronaut testbed partners say to train for a mission on Mars, it takes about 6 years, whereas for a moon mission or ISS, it's about 2 to 3 years. So 6 years of training, theoretically, is no longer really feasible, as the missions are 2 to 3 years long as well. And it additionally, at the moment, with the ISS and the moon, can communicate quickly for the upcoming moon mission, if that ever takes place. It's still possible in emergency situations to contact ground control in the ISS as well. So ISS, for example, they even have a lost and found. When you can't find your screwdriver, you call a unit in the European Space Agency and ask for when it was last used, and maybe that's where it's floating about. That's not really possible on Mars. So there are some points in time where the sun hides communication, so there's downtime. But even where Mars and Earth have a visual connection, I think the shortest is 8 minutes and the longest is something like half an hour of transmission time. So you can't quickly ask for things. You can, however, ask for creating some unit on the ground, shooting it off, shipping it up to Mars and having it available in a little while. And on top of it, you can create a lot of on-stock support. And our trials have found that it can fundamentally disrupt teaching as we know it, in particular because this new technology with the authoring tools that can be directly used by instructional designers, by teachers. It's no longer necessary to assemble a classic kind of software development team, but rather put the authoring back into the hands of the end users and go for user-generated content. And that's a game changer because it's a significantly different cost level. Yeah, looking ahead, what's coming next? I think we are entering a different paradigm in education. You can see that it's clearly driven from the needs we have towards further technical qualification. There are not enough people for the higher skilled technical jobs, and that has to do with the nature of things. Apprenticeships typically mean you look over the shoulder of someone else, and we only have 2 shoulders, but with these technologies we can train a lot more people efficiently and can do that with the support of standards and scale that also allows us to create an ecosystem of tools interfacing with the cloud, with other applications, with sign-on systems, with performance capturing systems, with back-end authoring tools and repositories. And I think it will certainly not stop there. We will probably have in the future also something that deals with all the spatial mapping data and allows applications to no longer need to scan spaces, but just retrieve them from the cloud. Yeah, we've already mentioned it. We have open sourced Mirage XR. So if any one of you wants to get started or involved, the community edition is open source now. Get in touch if you want to get access to it. It's MIT license, which is implemented in Unity. In the future, there will be a Moodle backend that we're working on now. It's standard compliant, and if you decide to go in the direction of scripted experiences in AR, then that may well be a starting point for you, where you might want to get in touch. What's specific about it? It's already mentioned the in situ authoring and the capturing technology with the Ghost. The approach as such, learning by doing, supporting people with live guidance directly in workplaces with real-time visualization and feedback. It is open standards compliance, so it will help create the big open content pool on the level of the web that we all would like to have. And it follows good academic practice. It follows cognitive methods and performance measurement, and it's been validated. So that should enable all of us to engage in the future with contactless, remote, real-time, diverse performance augmentation for learning in the real world. That's the team involved in Wikid ECS. I thought I briefly mentioned it, that we're not only the three of us here today and one of us who couldn't for personal reasons, but there are some more people in the background. And I remain here open for questions and discussion, and thank you so far for your attention.
Hi, thank you very much, Henry. Would the presenters like to turn on their cameras? Yeah, thank you very much. So everybody, this is the next section of the event, which is a Q&A session. So if you've got your questions, please type them into the question box, and then I'll be able to ask the presenters a question. I've got some already, and I think the first one really to Freundlich, it's to say, how is this going to impact the workplace? You know, what's going to happen? What is it going to look like in 5 years' time?
That's always difficult to predict the future, and I can only fail. And the reason why is, even if it comes, like I say, people will use different words in talking about it, and we not necessarily will really realize how much things have changed as we use them as a commodity. So I think in 5 years, a lot of the technology that you've seen in here, like smart glasses, are pretty much a commodity. I think I'm waiting every year for one of the giants to come out with the product that they want to mass produce. I think the technology is there. The glasses are on a level that you really want to buy them for home use. At least my kids do, and so do I. That the stuff is good, even if it still is a bit big. The experience you gain with this is like something you have never seen. But that will wear off in 5 years. In 5 years, I think devices will be smaller, slimmer, maybe not as noticeable if we're thinking of the more information-centric products like Google Glass and the like. You might not even recognize somebody's wearing them, like Sherlock Holmes style. And
so Ralph, where do you think? Sorry. Yeah, and Ralph, where do you think the technology is going to be in about 5 years' time?
Yeah, so same for me. Yeah, so it's hard to predict. Yeah, so because also it depends on what's happening in the near future. Yeah, so political things and have a big influence on technology. There's a big artificial intelligence war between China and the US.
Yes.
So that has deep impact on technology, and I think if you look at what is in the labs, yeah, so I would say much more artificial intelligence, yeah, so in any application area, but not to the level they are promising it to us, yeah. So but the big trends like mobility, mobile use of the web, that will continue, and also I think that we will more and more decrease the transaction costs of doing business online and so on. You see that in China, yeah, so people are using mobile technology, and that is drastically reducing all transaction costs for searching, for transferring goods, money, and so on, fintech and so on. Yeah, so that I think will radically change the way we do business, but also I think in software engineering, yeah, so there will be much more use of artificial intelligence, and also hopefully more people which are interested not only in using apps, but also some more interested in how they are created. Yeah, so to have a voice in this, I think, very important processes.
Okay.
If I may add something, I think one thing from an augmented reality or XR perspective, I think in 5 years we will have the clouds, we will have spatially aware applications, and they will all be networked. So because your kids played Pokemon Go in the house, there is a scan of your house, and IKEA sends you a picture of your living room with the sofa in, if your privacy settings allow that. That's kind of, I think, what will happen a few years down the line, and in parts that's scary, and in parts that's super exciting.
Yeah. So we can say that 5G is an enabler. So if we ever get 5G, that will speed up the use of augmented reality or XR. Okay.
If I may add something to that question,
yes.
I agree with Friedel and Ralph that yes, there will be more, I would say, human hologram interaction in that sense and in various senses with all the implications. I mean, we talked about it, our ghost tracking feature at work, but it might be more in daily life. And the use of devices also will be available. So we know the technology. From a business perspective, where competition or where the technology will come from, we don't know, because I mean, we have seen Apple entering the watch market and competing. I mean, a market that was a monopoly of Swiss manufacturers, and we might see maybe Ray-Ban, which is a glass manufacturer, entering the smart glass business. So where the competition and development of such technologies will come from, that is what we still, I would say, we don't know. It can come from mobile phone manufacturers, social media, or even, as I said, glass or garment producers. So I wouldn't be surprised if even fashion companies might compete into that market.
Yeah. No, it's a big challenge. So we got a question here from one of the speakers. So you mentioned privacy, Freud. So what are the ethical and privacy challenges of VR, AR technology if it's adopted?
One of the biggest one is especially where you have optical tracking, that your camera is on and sees things, and services become smarter. So there are cognitive services that are acting on top of the splines that you map out over the environment. They figure out, okay, that's a chair, and there's a floor, and there is a window, and here is your Van Gogh. Of course, I have a Van Gogh hanging in my room. And where's the nearest exit route for robbers?
Even this GoToWebinar tells me whether you're being attentive or not. So if you your face isn't on the camera or you minimize it, the system tells me if people aren't being attentive. So it's already creeping in. So the other challenge is if the BBC have just released an article around 100,000 fake images, of women, naked images. So this kind of technology could then turn it into a 3D model where you're interactive. There's a huge, danger where people are using social media images which are public and then doing something bad with them. So what are the challenges around that? How do we police AR?
That's a very good question. So in principle, I think it's in two respects. Policing is one aspect, but it's also securing the privacy so that, 3D scans of my kids shouldn't be on the web without my okay and things like that. It's essentially something that you can't predict from a technical perspective. This is something that we have to have a dialogue about as society. And since these technologies are just kind of beginning to become mainstream, that consumers are becoming aware of what's actually going on and happening there, it is maybe still a bit premature for that discussion.
Yeah. No. We have other discussions around privacy. So, yeah. No, it's fully challenged. So, okay, so let's look at what are the advantages of AR training? Yeah, what is the benefits? So let's start with Hendrik.
Right. I listed a few benefits, but I think the most important one is that it's immersive, and because of that, like the quote in the beginning, involvement, I will learn. So that quote resonated in me. So that the engaging part of it, the engaging part from the perspective of the learner, the non-repetitive and facilitative and adaptive part with learning analytics from the perspective of the trainer, and the cost-saving element from the perspective of the decision maker in the company and the budget holder are what I think what drives the use of augmented reality from a business perspective in education and training.
Okay. And Ralph, what about the disadvantage of AR? Because we talk about 3D TVs and people getting headaches. So what about the length of time somebody's wearing glasses or any kind of perception illness?
Yeah, so perception illness is not a problem of augmented reality. Ergonomics is a big problem. Yeah, so people have to wear it during a full shift. Yeah, so they would complain about that the devices are still too heavy and not comfortable enough to wear. Battery life is a problem. Yeah, so no device can really use for 8 hours for a full shift, for example. Another thing people are not really aware of, it's an augmented reality device is a look-through device. Yeah, so it takes a video of the environment. So also if people are walking through the eye view of the camera, yeah, so they are recorded by the device. And that is like Tesla is recording also the environment. So the same is for every augmented reality device. So privacy is a big issue. Ergonomics is a big issue. But also the hardware is a big issue. Software is getting better. Yeah. So there is a lot of things going on, but there are still some problems with interoperability of devices. Yeah, so if you buy one device, you're normally locked in the vendor, like with HoloLens. Yeah, so they try to escape now to have more cross device interoperability and so on. So it's getting slowly better, but there are still a lot of problems.
Okay, and Frederick, have you anything to add?
About simulator sickness, I can add something. We ran an experiment with, I think it was 150 people to measure whether people actually do have simulator sickness on AR glasses, and the levels we found are negligible. We found the only effect was very, very small was for eye strain. And that has probably more to do with, as Ralph already said, the ergonomics of the device. But it could, of course, be an effect of the vergence accommodation conflict when you have the display so close to your eye and it's only the illusion that the beams come from the far off objects. There are situations where the eye or the early processing in the brain, I think, realizes that's not the case, and that may tire them more quickly, but the effect was very small in comparison to the rest, and in particular to nausea and vertigo. That's not the case for augmented reality devices, probably because they don't render the full world surrounding you as with VR devices, and there it may be a bit more difficult. Also, I haven't read anything about it like the Quest, where you also have that spatial mapping and the adaptation to the room surrounding you, which is then more similar to modern AR.
Yeah. Andrew, did you want to say something?
If I can add something more, I would say as a challenge rather than as a limitation, I can think of two. One is who is to blame if something goes wrong? The manufacturer of the device, of the software, or the people. And that, in a way, creates a lot of legal issues which we still don't know. The other thing is some jobs might be lost and some new ones might be created. So that creates a bit of a disruption in the job market. And that's, again, is a challenge that requires some training and retraining for some, starting with the trainers. We've all had to deal with part of it with new forms of training and learning due to the current COVID situation. So these are two of the main challenges that I could think of. I think the first would be real when it's fully implemented. I mean, who is to blame when things go wrong?
Yeah, no, it's understandable. Okay, so what about the cost of building AR training material? You know, Friedan, you mentioned that there's like corporate kind of setups, you know, professional setups, and then there's minimal setups. What is the rough cost of creating, say, 30 minutes of augmented reality training material?
Depends on how polished you need it, but basically you can get, that's the kind of goal we have for WeKidS, BCS, that it takes as long as it takes to show. So through those recording modes, and in particular through the inbuilt authoring mode that you just drag the types of holograms you want into your environment and then save it and shoot it up to the cloud, that takes someone who has practice with showing something like that in the medium as well, somebody who knows what it looks like when you film this way, what it looks like when you do a ghost track, what a photo looks like best, then it takes them one-to-one time of showing that. In reality, that's of course unrealistic, and you would do 3, 4, 5 different takes until you're happy, and you probably after the second take walk back to your desk, open the unit in a web-based editor and hack down some text or re-record an audio or something like that. But essentially it's down to regular content production as you would have it for the web.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then you
but
can
do you have any
spice it up.
figures or costs? So any kind of ballpark figures?
So in the kind of create a branded experience of a player and recorder with which you roll out your own content, we're talking lower end thousands. And if you want to integrate it with your existing handbooks and you need transformation chains from your existing content, converting it, harvesting stuff from your existing repositories, then that's more expensive. But because that's bespoke development then in the end effect. But if we're talking about really just producing the learning material, then with a couple of thousand, you go the mile.
Yeah, and you mentioned that that there's open source software. How much of that is available? How good is it?
So the community edition has a shared backend. So the repository services are shared with all the users, and they're provided on a kind of as-is basis. But the whole client software is fully open source. I mean, the core part of it. So everything that you need to get into production, and yeah.
Okay,
so a lot of source code as well. So it's the total source code project, did we look that up recently? It's a couple 100,000 lines of code.
Yeah.
A big project, yeah.
Okay.
But it's well organized.
Okay, so I've seen the kind of training that you've done on planes and mechanical devices, but education is a bit more broader than this. So what age group would this benefit? For example, I'm working with 8-year-olds and 11 to 11-year-olds. We want to be able to use augmented reality to teach them cyber skills. Is that possible, or is that still far away?
That's definitely possible. I mean, when you talk with younger age groups and you get them involved, they will be all ears for producing content like that. If you want to roll out to 1 million kids, then of course you have to think very carefully about what you feed them, because that's no longer a situation in which they're engaged and making that theirs how they want it. But in principle, you can start tomorrow with a group of 20, 30. That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, but what's the ideal target of subject and age group for augmented reality learning?
To be honest, sky's the limit. We are focusing on technical qualifications in particular. So we try to help that problem of manufacturing doesn't have enough good people. And that's kind of what we want to support mostly. So a lot of the augmentations that we build are tuned towards that, and have the right level of precision, and the repositories we have access to for already existing 3D stuff, like nuts and bolts and probes and this and that, is in our universe. But for anyone else, the sky's the limit.
Okay, so we're coming to the end. I just want to get a couple of ending comments from you guys. So can you name 1, 2, or 3? It doesn't really have to be a large number. Just things that will happen with augmented reality, either that you like to see, is beginning to happen, or will eventually happen, so that we have a nice thing. We'll start off with Ralph on the technical level first.
I think what will happen is that augmented reality is coming to the web. There's already a standard for it called WebXR. Already search engines like Google adding augmented reality content to search results. I would expect that with coming years, yeah, so we will see a lot of more 3D content. But also, as you said, for example, for small children, books with augmented reality content, you open the book and the dinosaur jumps out of the book and so on. That will happen quite soon, yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I've seen also like nice games for augmented reality. My wife, she likes to play Angry Birds augmented reality on the iPad Pro. It's really nice if all the buildings crash in your living room, yeah. So and yeah, so that will come, yeah. So entertainment, web, augmented reality will become much more popular than it is in the moment.
That sounds very good, very good. Henrik, what do you think?
Well, I think in the future, at least I'd like to see how augmented reality helps to, in a way, bridge the skill gap in the European Union, especially in the manufacturing sector, so facilitates that. Secondly, I see it as an opportunity for startups and young innovative companies to be involved with more traditional companies and offer something. And thirdly, I see it as an opportunity for creative people. It's a door where what we have called as creative work, creative industries, or creative freelancers. It's another opportunity on another level for them to do more, maybe through these startups, through these innovative companies, and find a way, a door to reach even very traditional industries in certain areas that have remained quite traditional, like training, for example. But thanks to augmented reality, can change and evolve swiftly.
No, that sounds good. Thank you very much. Yeah, and Friedlin, what do you think?
I think we will have, going in the future, reality as a medium. With these technologies that are there, we can alter the real world temporarily or where we interact with machines also permanently. And that makes that vision of the reality being a canvas of what we want it to be much more plastic and much more real.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I'd like to thank all of you for talking today. I'd like to thank the audience for taking part in this, and it was an interesting presentation. So just to wind up, we will be sending out an email to everybody with the link to the video and the presentation, if you confirm, to everybody after this event. So I'd like to thank our speakers. I'd like to thank the attendees, and have a good evening, and I hope to see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.